tree. Here without the fence, where we playeth nothing but chance, and more chance. This are not thine elder matriarch, Stacy.
How's it going? Oh, I forgot to change. Romans, how are you doing? You see me. Excellent. Yes, I will. I'm sorry I forgot to respond in a timely manner. Yeah, I should be able to do that. And why isn't... Oh, that's why I didn't have it there. Oop, let's throw that over here. Doop. That way everybody can see what we're doing. Good. I'm doing all right. It's been a nice New Year's so far. Let's see. Nothing too major. It's been pretty chill. I hope your New Year's was also relaxing. So instead of using a Zenithal Prime here, I'm going to use a dry brush to pick out the details on this particular miniature so that we can see all the we can just see all the details and the like. I'm not going to use white for this. Hey, Painterly Git, how are you doing? Where did... Where's my regular neutral gray? Okay, there it is. Okay, we're actually just going to use a neutral gray to pick out some of the details here. And we're going to be doing this with a dry brush. Just to show a different way to get the miniatures details to kind of show up for us to be able to clearly paint them, and so we can see them after a black prime. We're not going to be doing slap chop or anything like that. I don't do slap chop right now, but I wanted to show because I have a hard time. Her arm fell off. I thought that was more secure. All right, well, I guess we're not working on her for a little bit. Another good reason to do some dry brushing or something similar, make sure the pieces are all glued properly. Hers were apparently not. No, come on, stick on there. Okay, so her arm fell off, so we're gonna set that off to the side for now. And instead we're gonna grab one of the other ladies and hope that her arm doesn't fall off. Now, these miniatures are from the game, a very small game developed here in Portland called Cyber Savage. These are solar matriarchs. It's kind of like the the all-female faction, or at least out of all the presets. And the way to think about these miniatures and kind of their style and everything is think like He-Man or the Masters of the Universe, or She-Ra from the Masters of the Universe and the He-Man thing, or think Thundercats, or really any one of those IPs. And that's kind of the thought, that's kind of the aesthetic behind the miniatures that are made specifically for Cyber Savage. Cyber Savage can work for just about any kind of feel, any kind of aesthetic. But the ones that the miniatures they're making for, you know, they're intentionally making are kind of set around that laser sorcery, hyper technological, post-apocalyptic type of setting that a lot of us older folks grew up with on Saturday morning cartoons with Masters of the Universe, Thundercats, the Hanna-Barbarians in general. Well, right now I'm just dry brushing with a neutral gray, and then once that's dry, we'll hit them with a lighter gray. But this is just a way for people to take a black primed miniature that it's very hard to see the details on, and without an airbrush, be able to kind of start picking out those details in a way that just lets them easily see all the details on a miniature without having to use like an airbrush to zenithal prime or anything like that, because airbrushes are not necessary. They're not needed. They are very useful for a lot of different things, but you absolutely do not need an airbrush any more than you need a wet palette. They are useful tools, that is it. And this is just a different way to build up some visibility of details on a miniature. So this lady, she's got a giant cannon. We're gonna let her dry. We're gonna let that dry. And here we've got another lady, but she's got a scythe. I tried to assemble these with some of the what I thought were the coolest options, keeping in mind the whole Masters of the Universe type of idea. Her arm came off too. Man, I did not glue these well, did I? Well, we're gonna be re-gluing that arm too. Thanks for the watch streak, buddy. Doing well. We survived New Year's Eve and Rascal's birthday. Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. This is kind of one of the more least interesting parts, getting the things prepped and ready to go and picking out details and things like that. But it is pretty important to kind of the final product, and I just thought it'd be interesting to go over. Pin the arm. The joints are, the wrist joint is too small to pin, and this is 3D printed resin, so it could present a little bit of a shatter concern. But if I re-glue, if it happens again, I'll take a look at that. I think maybe I just didn't have maybe a little too little glue, because I try really hard to use minimal amounts of glue. I find that glue dries faster when there's not a huge amount of it, and then I don't use accelerant. So I think maybe I used a little too little glue there. So now we'll let that go, and we're gonna really come back to this arm. Uh-oh. Okay, so we're gonna need to put a little glue underneath her hand here because it's kind of drooping a bit. Okay, so we're gonna let both of those dry, and then we're gonna come back to these other two ladies who we just did a little bit of dry brushing, and then we're gonna get some light gray, and we're gonna dry brush that on to really get kind of the last little bit of brightness here in a couple spots. We're just doing this to pick out some of the details, just so that I can see the details a little bit easier, because I am older. And I usually use zenithal priming for this, but I wanted to show a different way to do this without using an airbrush, and just trying to be kind of gentle with it. There we get some of the details pointed out, outlined a little bit, and we'll base coat over all this. This is just kind of the initial. This is certainly not necessary, but if you find that a black prime is really difficult for you to see, this is something you could do. Okay. So let's put that away. That away. So we're gonna go with kind of the same type of color palette that you could see in some of those early like He-Man movies or He-Man cartoons and that whole genre. And I've been picking up reference materials, and they use lots of. I mean, all the characters have maybe 3, maybe 4 main colors. And there's not a huge amount of really dark shadowing, not a huge amount of highlighting. So we're not going to go perfect with this, but we're going to take inspiration from some of these outfits here. So let's see. Let's go look. Screen share. So here's. Princesses of Power from the Masters of the Universe. We've got a few different options here. Of course, we have She-Ra, and then we've got this desaturated teal almost with pink, and then we've got bluish purple and purple, and then we've got navy blue and yellow, and we've got white and navy blue, and then we've got green and grays. Got those as options. Of course, here's something from the more recent She-Ra movie. It's got great set of color palettes fitting into this whole universe of laser sorcery. And then we've got the main cast of Masters of the Universe here. So we've got some great color palettes here. She-Ra here again. Let's see. We've got Thundercats as well. So we've got some good what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiration. So I'm gonna start out. I'm gonna have her. We're gonna go kind of plum. here as a base color. Now, looking at her, her outfit is actually mostly armored. Her legs, there's a large piece of thigh armor, there's lower leg armor, there's the boots. Her arms, there's the armor, the vambrace here. There's a band. It looks like this arm is bare. And then, of course, she's got her torso armor and her helmet. So we're going to go, excuse me, we're going to do dark plum for most of this as just kind of our base shadow color for her armor. And we're just going to go over everything that is armored. And that dry brush that we did earlier just helps me see where certain pieces of armor and certain other details end and others begin. Just makes it a little bit easier to do some quick base coating. Do you recommend painting fully built minis or piece by piece for beginners? It really depends on the miniature. Sub-assemblies is not a bad idea at all, but I do not recommend painting every piece completely separately from one another. Experiment with you know, assembling most of the model, but keep things that like block line of sight, keep those off and then paint those separately and glue those on later. Like, for example, if I was new, I wouldn't have glued this shield on. That way I can paint in behind here, but as things are, right now I don't have a problem gluing that shield on right now. But maybe somebody who's starting out, they might not have the dexterity to be able to get in behind the shield, so maybe they should keep that arm and that shield off. But this arm here, because it's all wide out and exposed, I don't have any problem. It's not blocking the rest of the model, so painting that isn't going to be a problem. I do not personally, you know, this is a personal thing, I do not recommend painting on the sprue. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand how that is supposed to work or be more efficient. I think that is not an efficient way to paint, but there are plenty of people who do that, and it does work for them. It works for their brains. It does not work for my brain, so I don't do that. Who is Lord Helmwar? Okay, so this is a Warhammer Necromunda question. Lord Helmwar has classically been the current governor of the world of Necromunda. In the current timeline, that is not the case. He has basically been deposed, and that's the current story timeline going on in Necromunda right now. Is he has been deposed? He's off his throne. And there is someone else trying to, you know, to rule Necromunda or going through the process of taking over. We don't know for sure if he's dead or not, but the Helmwar family The Helmwar family has ruled Necromunda for thousands of years, if I remember. Maybe hundreds of years. I don't remember what the actual timeline is. I should remind myself of that. Let's see. I know I'm missing. Am I gonna thick black line the mini? No, painterly get. I don't want to do comic book style. I mean, it would look cool, but man, I'm just so out of practice of that, and this is for. I don't think I'm gonna do that. I might, but I'm not really. I did generally think about that. I'm just not sure how I feel about it. Hey, Waldos, how are you doing? Just got some crude and was looking at to try and do a bioluminescent skin. Any suggestion? So all of their skin, like, glowing? I'm not sure if I have a really good suggestion for that, other than just you're gonna have to figure out how to paint all their skin so it looks like it's glowing. I think it'd be easier to do spots of bioluminescence, as opposed to, you know, their entire skin being bioluminescent. Their entire skin being bioluminescent basically means that the entire thing is glowing, and I think that'd be really difficult to make to make it look like it makes sense on the miniature, because we're using paint, right? We're not using actual, like, actual light emitting things. So we're trying to use paint to create the optical illusion of light being generated by those bioluminescent points. I think doing that across the entire skin would be extremely difficult, because so much of optical illusions, especially painting, relies on contrast between something that is glowing and something that is not glowing. And if all the skin is glowing, it's going to be really difficult to trick the viewer's eye into seeing it as glowing and not just, you know, white, or not just like a really bright pale color, because there's not going to be a whole lot around them other than maybe their equipment that isn't glowing, and so there's not going to be as much to give like the optical illusion, I guess. If they're just got spots of their skin that are bioluminescent and glowing, that would be much easier to do, because then you can paint the most of their skin the normal way, and then, you know, have those spots of skin be the glowing bits, and that'd be much easier to create that kind of visual contrast that sells a glowing effect. I know nothing of Necromunda, but I'd love to get a group for some narrative. The new Justicars look great. Yeah. Probably closer to how it is with the Navi from Avatar. Yeah, I've never really thought about having to do that, so I'd have to put some serious thought into how to do that. I've been using a wet palette, still can't get my paint to a good texture with thinning it. So Raymond Humphrey, when you put the paint on the miniature, what is the what's happening to it? What's it doing? Let's see. Let's see. I'm pretty new to painting minis. Does that one have primer? Yes. Yeah, it is. It's black primer. And then I did a dry brush over it with some gray just to pick out some of the details so that I could see them. And then I've got this big guy that I built for a Cyber Savage game, a game day. So we'll get to painting him eventually. But right now, I'm just starting like really basic base coats for the armor, mapping things out on a couple of these while we're waiting for the paint to dry or the glue to dry on a couple others. So I think for her, I think for this one with the purple, with like the plum, I think we're gonna go plum and gold. I think those are the colors we're gonna do. We're gonna do plum and kind of a yellow or gold for her. Now here with this jade color, I gotta figure out what other color that I want to use on her. She's a heavy gunner, right? So she's, you know, she's gonna be there blasting things with her giant cannon. I just started doing Warhammer models. What's the best color for them for blood? Probably, if you're talking about Games Workshop paints, then probably the blood for the Blood God technical paint. That's really, really good. It looks like fresh blood, and then you could mix in some black paint or some brown paint, just a tiny bit of it to make them look like old blood. That's something you could absolutely do. Kind of acts like there's no primer, even though there is, if that makes sense. Raymond, is it beading up? If it's beading up, then it's too thin. That would be my my first guess. If it's beading up, then I think it's too thin. The paint should not be so thin that it beads up like that. You may need to thin it less. And these are Raymond, the paints that you're working with, these are regular hobby paints, right? These are not like speed paints or contrast paints. You're not thinning those, are you? You shouldn't need to thin those very much, or at all, really. There are thinners specifically for speed paints and for contrast paints. So, you know, if you need to make them more transparent, then you can do that. But that's really the only reason you'd want to thin them, is just to make sure they're more transparent. Inside Art, you've got some Terminators you're painting. They're going really well. Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Do you have an airbrush, and do you think it's worth it? Because I'm debating getting one or not. I do have an airbrush, and for certain situations, it's absolutely worth it. If you live in a cold area where maybe it's difficult to prime your miniatures for most of the year because primer doesn't do well with a lot of cold weather, then you know an airbrush makes that really easy. If you are painting vehicles, airbrushes make painting vehicles or getting base coats on vehicles very, very easy. Other than that, you know, there are absolutely advantages to an airbrush. They are absolutely not necessary. It really depends on what your use case is. But I can certainly recommend an airbrush. There's a lot of wonderful things you can do with it. But I don't say that it's something that everybody needs, because everybody does not need an airbrush. It's just not going to be as useful for everybody. But there are certainly people where it will be more useful in more circumstances. And we're just mapping out some of the light here. This is all going to get refined with glazes and things like that afterwards. But right now I'm just kind of mapping out where highlights are generally going to be, things like that. This is all pretty going to be, it's going to look pretty rough for now. And that's okay. Let's see. Waldo's, how are you doing? I know you said that earlier, and I think I missed it. I apologize. I hope you're doing well. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everybody on TikTok, everybody on Twitch, everybody on YouTube. I hope your new year is going well. I just realized I forgot to do her armor. Bracers, van braces, whatever you want to call them. I know there's probably a technical term for them that I'm missing. If I only have speed paints, what else should I get to detail? Speed paints are going to get you most of the way there, but if you want detail stuff, if you want to have that control to do detail, you need regular paints too. Speed paints, speed paints are going to cover, you know, they're going to get color on the area, but they're so transparent that you can't really use them to pick out details on miniatures, because those details are going to most likely already have speed paint on them, and speed paint doesn't cover other speed paint very well. So you're going to need regular paints to do your detail work. Now you can avoid that if you're really careful with your speed paints and you're really delicate and precise with the placement of your speed paints when you're doing your initial layers. Then you can really control where those speed paints go. But not everybody has that, especially at the beginning. It takes a lot of familiarity with how the speed paints flow, what their transparency level is, and brush control. So most people can't be that precise super early, or they have a very difficult time. So generally having some, at minimum, you'd want some off-white paints to go over your details again, and then you could do your speed paint back over that off-white. That would probably be the easiest way to minimize the amount of regular paints you need. And if you want to just use your speed paints, anywhere where the speed paint hit where you don't want it to be, you just paint that over with your off-white, or whatever color you want to use to cover that up, and then you go over that again with the speed paint with the color that you actually want there. That'd probably be the easiest way to do that particular thing. But that means you're putting the speed paint down, and then you're cleaning it up, you're neatening it up, and then you're coming in with another speed paint. So that's a way to do it. Dungeon Synth would hit so hard right now. You're not wrong. This is very laser sorcery Dungeon Synth. Yeah, that would fit really well. Yeah, I agree, Landon. It's a lot of fun. I find base coating a Prime Mini weirdly satisfying to do by hand. Yeah, I'm still super new. Thank you. Yeah, you're very welcome. Feel free to keep asking questions if you've got them. I'll do my best to answer. Not always able to see all the questions, so I do try to pay attention. Okay. Do you have a rough plan, or do you just wing it? Yeah, I have a rough plan, but I have a very rough plan, but that's about it. Because unlike there are people out there who can see what the miniature, what they want, an art piece or a miniature or something that they're doing. They can see what they want it to look like in their mind's eye, and they can see it fairly clearly. I am not one of those people. I cannot see the end result of the miniature in my brain very clearly. I have general impressions. I have a general vague idea of what I want it to look like, but I don't have a super clear image. So yeah, that's about as clear as I get. So I have a general idea of kind of like the impression I want. Sometimes I have a general idea of what colors I want. But it's not a really crystal sharp image of what the end result's going to be. I do know that I want her to be a limited set of colors, a limited set of hues. There will be plenty of shades of those hues throughout the whole thing, but she's not going to be a whole lot of different colors there. So the primary colors on her are going to be this purple, that's going to be yellow, and then it's going to be her skin. Those are the primary hues that are going to be in here. And most of those are going to, like, everything that is yellow is either going to is really going to be made up of the same colors, just in different ratios, so that I have a different kind of impression on each one. For instance, her hair, I want her hair to be blonde, so I am going to start her out as brown and then lighten that up into kind of like a straw, kind of a dirty blonde or a straw blonde. but then you know, the rest of the colors on her, the rest of the yellows, will be similar shades, just with, you know, a slightly different set of ratios there. So some are going to have more yellow, some are going to have less yellow, some are going to have more brown, things like that. Because remember, this is like Hanna-Barbera. There was not a whole lot of like color. They had to draw these very quickly. There was not a huge amount of color variation that they could really work with, because they had to produce these very, very fast. So keeping the art style kind of simple and easy to replicate was a huge priority for a lot of them. So we're kind of doing that kind of the same type of idea here. We're borrowing from that discipline. And we'll see how things go. If something doesn't end up looking okay, then, you know, we'll just go back and repaint it. That's all right. Nothing wrong with saying, "Yep, that didn't work," and then coming back and repainting. This yellow is going to take a couple of layers, and that's just kind of expected. Let's see. Base painting Ruinator Knight right now. My fingers hurt. Oh, well, God, best of luck to you. I hope that goes well. In my mind, putting that yellow straight over the brown negated the brown. So the brown is there just to make sure I'm not going over straight black. Brown was slightly lighter than the black, and the yellow is notoriously transparent. So if I can bring the yellow up to a brighter color, before putting, if I can go over the black with some lighter colors, like a dark umber and a light umber, and then go into like a darker yellow, and then go up into brighter yellow, that's going to make it much easier to cover the the black. You're using intermediate steps. Where's my light umber? Where did I put that? I kind of need that. Well, I don't need it. It'd make things a lot easier. There we go. No, you're good. There's no offense. No offense taken. Saw the word Necromunda click so fast. Yeah, I like answering questions about Necromunda. We're not painting Necromunda right now, but questions about Necromunda lore, things like that. I like answering those and helping people get more acquainted with the world and everything that has to do with Necromunda. Right now, I'm doing kind of a semi-sponsored stream for a game that's been developed here in Portland called Cyber Savage. But if you have Necromunda questions, or if you want to chat Necromunda, 100%, I'm here for it. I need to get back into doing. I did start a series of lore videos on Necromunda, and starting with the Eschers, and I need to hop back into that. I've got one more video for sure that I want to do right now about the different beasts that the Eschers tame and use, and then we'll go on to the Orlocks. That's the plan for the new year. Then move on to the others. So there's so much about Necromunda that can be talked about in short form video that I think it'd be worth spending the time to do that. And it's such a cool world. I think it's a really interesting set of models, a really an interesting game if you're okay with like super narrative and not balanced at all. We're working on a new gang right now. Nice. What gang? I picked up the new Justicars, the new Palanite Enforcer specialists. Need to do something with those. Let's see. I think I need to go over this with I think I did too much of a jump. So we're going to go back over this yellow with light umber. We're going to let that dry, and then we'll do yellow over that again, because there was still too much of a value shift, I think. And then this will let me pick out some other areas while this is drying. So I don't want to lose momentum while we're painting here. Okay. Got light umber there, light umber there. Outcast Mutants, or Kit Bash at heart. I mean, Kit Bash at heart, so I play all the weird stuff. Nice. That sounds awesome. That sounds really cool. Okay, let's gotta set that aside and let that start to dry. Now, alternate the other color for this. Let's go in with Jade here just to start pumping that color up. Ooh, that is some thick paint. Need to thin that down. Trying to focus my paint strokes on general areas that are going to get hit by an overhead light, and then keep the areas that are not going to get hit by that overhead light, keep those in shadow, just to make this nice and easy. We're imagining the light is above the miniature. We're not trying to do like any kind of weird or you know, environmental lighting, anything like that. We're just going really straightforward with the highlighting and everything here. If anybody is interested in checking out Cyber Savage or anything about it, you can, in the Twitch chat, you can put in exclamation point Cyber Savage. It'll bring up a link to their website. You can also search on Instagram, and I don't believe they have a TikTok, but they do have an Instagram, they do have a YouTube, they do have a Discord. It's a nice small scale game made by a small scale team. A pair of brothers primarily here in the Portland, Oregon area, and I got to play a bunch of games a few weekends ago at an event they had here locally in southern Washington. was a lot of fun. Huge amount of fun. The game is fast. The game is is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Fast, very deadly. People die super fast. I took down I took down one opponent in one turn. I got fairly good. I got fairly good rolls, but I took him out in one turn. It was pretty brutal. My first king was Helots, and I used the Warcry Spider guys in my base for the kit patches. That's awesome, Leo. Yeah, those spider Warcry warband is super creepy. That sounds awesome. New 40k play here doing orcs. I really want to do the older cartoony green look for them. Any tips? Then what you're gonna want is if you're going for older cartoony look, then you want brighter greens. So stay away from the olive greens. Stay away from the army greens. You want very saturated greens. You want greens that have a lot of green to them and haven't had a bunch of, they're not dull looking greens. If you want that bright cartoony look to them, you're gonna want greens like this. Now this is, you can any paint range has this type of green in it, but you're going for bright green, right? You're not going for like an army or an olive green. That would be your color choice is going to influence that look, that final look a lot there. And if you're going for that bright cartoony look, you need to have bright colors. Now, how you paint those, that can be, you've got a lot of bandwidth there. You've got a lot of variety, a lot of options there that you don't have to, you don't have to paint them a certain way. It's just the biggest thing that's going to influence that feel, that kind of cartoony, bright, orky feel is going to be your color choices. That's going to have the biggest impact. That's my opinion anyway. Yeah, purple shadows could look really cool. Purple shadows could look really, really cool. Okay. I'm gonna base coat some of the skin here just so that we can help define some of that. I see a couple questions there. Give me just a second to finish these hands, or at least getting some color on these hands, and then we will. I'll try to answer those questions here. We've also got we've got 10 seconds before ads start. So we're gonna take a 3-minute break, a 3 to 5 minute break. Then I'll be right back. Use this time to use the bathroom, get some water, all that stuff. We do have to take this break. I don't get to skip it. So that'll be starting here in just a second, and we'll put ourselves on Be Right Back, and then I'll be happy to answer questions about Cyber Savage or any other questions that I'm seeing in chat here. So just if you could stick around, that'd be great. Both on the on TikTok and on the purple app and the red app. Spooky, glad to have you here. And Leo, I see your question. We will answer that in just a second. Just bought my first 40K army. Any painting tips? Alex, yes. Assemble your models. You know, when you're assembling your models, take your time. Don't rush yourself. Dry fit everything to make sure things fit properly before you glue them. And then, you know, you're going to have a much easier time painting your models. Also, keep in mind that that no amount of paint is going to fix a badly assembled model. If the model wasn't assembled fairly well, and that takes practice, it will show up. The paint's not going to fix that. So just do your best. You will get better at it. But then just keep that in mind. You know, dry fit everything. Make sure it's going to fit together. Make sure you know how it fits together before you actually put any glue to anything. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Okay, Leo, to answer your question, how does Cyber Savage play? It is a small scale, skirmish game where you're generally controlling 2 to 3, maybe 4 miniatures. So it's very small armies. The rules are pretty straightforward. Nothing really complex. The whole idea was just being able to really fit any miniature that you had could fit into playing Cyber Savage. So you generally you've got different classes of unit that you control, or that your miniatures can be. And those classes have different stats, different speeds, different attacks or attack powers, things like that, different levels of HP, and then, depending on what weapon skills you've got, it determines, kind of what types of weapons that they or what the powers of the weapons are. So in addition to those stats, you also have about 50 different character attributes or character traits that your miniatures can have, depending on how you're building it. For the event that we did, it was a random die roll to determine what traits you had, and then your weapon can also have traits. So let's see, my guy that I built here, Laser Fist, he is a Vanguard with a Vanguard who specializes in melee, so he's a melee Vanguard. That gave him certain amounts of hit points, certain movement attributes, things like that. And then he had good luck, and I believe it was reckless. No, it was last stand. He had good luck and last stand, and good luck helped improve some of his die rolls, and last stand allowed him, when he died, it allowed him to make a full attack, full melee or shooting attack, or do a movement. And then his weapon was a light weapon, but I determined that it was a light melee weapon, but I determined it was going to be a power fist that uses lasers, and he just punches really fast. So a light weapon just has more attacks but less damage, and it was incendiary, so it set things on fire, and it was unstable. So if it, for every successful hit, it did an additional damage, but it also did an additional damage to me. So depending on how you build your character and what attributes the character can have and the weapon can have, you can have completely unique characters every single time if you do random rolls, or you can just build them by the points system. And the point system is really straightforward. You determine how many levels each player has, and generally a regular game has 12 levels, and then each one of your characters has the stats, the traits they've got, things like that. All of those have different level values or level costs. So you can, depending on how many levels you want to pump into one person, that means you've got fewer levels to pump into another character. So you can have full control over. You're going to make maybe one really overpowered dude, and then a bunch of mooks that surround him and just kind of take hits or things like that for him. Or you could do a bunch of a bunch of really weak people, but you have a ton of them. Or you could say have some more fairly balanced or well balanced crew with people that are a little bit more evenly evenly enabled with powers, evenly spaced powers, I guess, distributed. So it really depends on how you want to build that. So because you don't have like, hey, this is a Terminator, it's worth this many levels, or you know, that type of equivalent, you get to determine who's the hero and how you want to distribute those when you're building your army list or your warrior list. And yeah, it's really straightforward. And there's no live by the dice, die by the dice type of thing. Both of you, when an attack happens, both you and the other person roll dice. The attacker does their attack dice, and the defender does their defense dice, or they can do their counter attack dice. And then as you both roll an equal number of die, and then you compare the values. The person who initiated the attack, say it's this person, they initiate the attack. They roll their dice, and they compare their dice results to the other player's defense dice. And if their dice exceeds that defense die, then they get a hit there. And then if the defender matches one of their dice against the attacker's dice, and it goes back and forth. So you're choosing which, comparing your highest dice to their lowest dice if you can, to try and negate or get the best result or the highest number of successes for yourself. Or if you're attacking, or try to negate or reduce as many successes as possible if you're a defender. So it's not down to, an attack's not just down to one die. Whether or not like, oh, this is the end of the game, I need to get a 4+, and or the game's over, you roll and that's it. In this, you have a dice pool where you get a little bit more autonomy, and both players are able to have a lot of autonomy when it comes to determining how the attacks are resolved and how the defense is resolved, things like that. And that Chai Cat, how are you doing? No worries about being late. I'm sorry I didn't see your message until right then. I hope you're doing well. And yes, Leo, thank you for helping Alex there with some of the suggestions. Plastic glue, extra thin cement is great. Citadel paints are fine but pricey. Yeah. Specific types of glue and paints I should use. Yeah, so when it comes to paints, any of the dedicated hobby paints are going to be good. I would not cheap out on paints, personally. Yes, Citadel are pricey, and there are better, there are other hobby paints out there that are just as good and not as pricey, but if you don't have access to those, that's not going to be a huge amount of help. So really any of the major hobby lines of paint, Vallejo Model Color, Vallejo Game Color are good. Pro Acryl from Monument is good. Two Thin Coats is good. Army Paint or War Paints, War Paint Fanatics are good. Obviously, Citadel is good. Those are going to be the ones that you're most likely to see in any local store you might go to. Those are all super solid. There's no hesitation about any of those. I would not recommend using craft paints or anything like that from like Walmart or the craft store. Those can be used. You can use them. They're just not very easy to work with because they're very thick, and they are also very transparent. You're gonna have to do a bunch of layers to get any kind of good coverage, and that can just, that can eat up a lot of time. So it really depends on, what you're willing to do. But I never recommend cheaping out on paints. I do recommend getting inexpensive brushes. You don't need expensive brushes when you're starting out, and generally people don't need really expensive brushes in general. I use very cheap brushes for the majority of my painting, but I don't, a cheap set of golden tackle-on bristle brushes, those are going to do you really well for miniature painting, especially when you're starting out. And that's what I'm using right now. I'm using some very inexpensive synthetic golden tackle-on bristle brushes. You can get these at Walmart. You can get these at Fred Meyer's. Just make sure it says Golden Taklon, because that's a really nice synthetic material that doesn't stain very much, and it keeps its tip a lot better than a lot of other paints, a lot of other inexpensive brushes do. Those are my suggestions, but you know, do with that what thou wilt. Yeah, it is really customizable. In fact, there's one of the other guys at the event that I went to. He is also a game designer, and he designed a he designed like a non-magical like WWE miniatures game. And he and I were talking about the rules and how much we liked how customizable it is and things like that. So, in just how modular it seemed. Now, I am talking to the Cyber Savage guys about using their Cyber Savage system for a game that I'm working on called Kill Clock. And so we'll see how that goes. They said they'd be fine with it as long as I credit Cyber Savage on any of the stuff that I do. So I just need to get my hands on a set of the copy of the rules. They're still doing Kickstarter fulfillment, so you can't really buy it in retail or in PDF at the moment. The Kickstarter stuff should be done at the end of this month, January. And then I'll be able to get my hands on a copy of the rule book, I think. I did not get into the Kickstarter because I didn't even find out about this game until October. And when I was at CritCon here in Portland. And that's where I first found out about the game. So I was a little late to the show, and that's okay. But they asked me if I wanted to paint some models for them, and that's what we're doing. So I jumped at that opportunity, so I very much appreciate them asking me to slap some paint down on some minis for them. So we're going to take our time and we're going to do the best job we can. Hey, AD Creations, how are you doing? Purple Spark, Alice, how are you? Happy New Year to both of you. Thanks for popping in. I hope you're doing well. Why is that so dark? Okay. Oh, Alice, thank you so much for the diamond. I really appreciate that. I live for forged narratives and baking it into crew building and its peak design. Loves me some crunch. Nice. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Definitely check out the website. Check out their, just search Cyber Savage on Google. It's the only thing that's going to come up. Also, if you look up laser sorcery, Cyber Savage is the only thing that comes up. It's how they describe the genre for their setting is laser sorcery. And I've looked it up. Nobody else apparently has used that particular nomenclature. So, it works. It works for him. I think laser sorcery is pretty darn descriptive for the whole, the whole weird hyper high tech that He-Man and the Masters of the Universe had, while also being like barbarians. Like it's such a weird setting. Masters of the Universe and Thundercats and all of those. It's just such a weird setting where it's just there's so much like hyper tech in there, but also, I'm smacking people around with a sword. That's one of the cool things about it. It's very, very 1990s, 80s cartoon feel. Thank you, Purple Spark. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's see. That... The paint on her back is very rough. It's also kind of see-through, so we're gonna try and neaten some of this up. A lot of this is gonna require some back and forth, and that's okay. Don't be afraid to do back and forth, going back and forth in between colors and like fixing something and then going back and neaten things up. That's normal. That's a-okay. It should not, don't get frustrated by that. That should be expected. Yeah, different genres give you different stuff, fun stuff to build. Exactly. And one of the cool things about Cyber Savage is that it is like kind of inherently designed to be a kit bashers game. You know, we're getting more and more miniatures agnostic games out there, and they're all really catering to, you know, the kit basher and the people that, you know, 3D print and stuff like that. And Cyber Savage is no exception to that. In fact, Cyber Savage really, really just locks into that whole idea very strongly. I've never painted minis, but I've done some interior painting. Our primer is a good idea. Yeah, for miniatures, you do need to use a primer. Really, you know, just because acrylic paint does not adhere to plastic or 3D printed resin or metal, whatever the miniature is made of, it doesn't adhere to it really well. The primer does do a good job of adhering to it, and then to the surface, and then it also gives, you know, the acrylic paint some tooth. So yes, primer is a must, in my opinion. What's the setting like? Big into skirmish because I like making terrain. So I don't think they've gone into like really like hard detail about what the setting is. They've left it pretty open. But if you, let's see, if you go onto their Instagram, you'll see pictures of what the boards they've made look like. Let me see if I can bring some up here. And they've got some awesome boards. That's a video. Where's a still of one of the boards?
A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins. Oh. Nor is he early. He arrives
precisely when it means to. Mr. Svensson, thank you so much. How are you doing? Welcome on in. Michael Paints Minis, how are you doing? Welcome in, everybody. Thank you so much for the raid. How was the feedback stream? I assume that's what it was going on tonight, because I think that's what's usually on your Fridays, doing some feedback. I hope that went well. Good, thanks. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you as well. I probably asked you about this before, but are you going to be at Adepticon? I assume you are. I haven't looked at all the teachers that are doing all the different classes, but I assume you are. I could be wrong. We're working on some miniatures for a game called Cyber Savage, which was on Kickstarter. It was developed here in the Portland, Oregon area by a couple of brothers, and it is set in kind kind of a laser sorcery type of setting. That's the term they use. So think like He-Man and Masters of the Universe, Hanna, all the Hanna-Barbarian type of shows, and Thundercats and all those. If you're thinking about that type of show, that's the vibe that this is going over. So we're trying to do that kind of, not quite cell shaded, but we're trying to go for those a few primary colors with not a huge amount of shading or highlighting. I am obviously adding more in, but trying to go for a particular like laser sorcery type of vibe here. How to switch platform characters, limits driving nuts. Hey, no worries, Leo. Appreciate the follow there. He's judging Golden Demon this year. Oh, that's fantastic. That's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you. I hope you have a good time there. I have yet to start working on my Golden Demon. Any of them. I will probably end up doing one instead of a couple, but I don't know. I really gotta figure out my motivation. Because it's like I don't have any sense of urgency until we get to like a couple months away from Golden Demon to do anything for it, and I've got to figure out what is my major malfunction. But I look forward to seeing it again. I always love going through the Golden Demon. Just all the cases, they're just always awesome. They're a lot of fun to go through. Pardon the river. Hey, no worries. Feels very Throndar the Barbarian vibe. Yes, exactly. That is also, yes, Throndar the Barbarian. That's another type of thing. But you know, we've got chicks with giant laser cannons, chicks with shields and moon blades. We've got a chick with a scythe. I haven't started working on her yet because her arm fell off. And then we've got this one here. She's got a revolver rifle, and she looks kind of like, well, she doesn't look anything like Skeletor, but she looks like she's straight out of Master of the Universe, and that's the whole idea. And then I've got the guy that I made, who's primed and just not very put together yet. Let's see. I've never painted. How do you usually do layers? Exterior armor to interior, or vice versa? Vice versa. The only reason I'm doing it this way is because most of the miniature is going to be like one primary color, but generally you want to do work from the inside out, especially when you're starting. So let's take her for example here. I would start, if I was to paint from the inside out, I'd start with her face, because that's, you know, the innermost layer. I'd start with the face, skin, anything like that, and then I would go, I'd find anywhere where maybe she's got like a body glove, and I'd paint that, and then I do her main armor panels, and then I do the details on top of her armor panels, and like the butt cloth and the hair and things like that. So inside out, the same order that you get dressed in, generally. That's generally how I recommend, at least, especially beginners, start. Now, when you have more experience and you're doing other things, you may find that prioritizing other things may work for you better in certain circumstances, and that just takes practice to identify. So don't feel locked into that. That's just where I recommend people start. A lot of people will just, you know, they'll choose one part of the miniature and they'll paint that to completion, and then they'll move on to another part of the miniature and paint that to completion, and they'll just do it that way. And that there are definite advantages to that, because it helps you kind of like establish, okay, how far do I want to go? You kind of paint that one area until it's done, and it's like, okay, this is how far we're gonna go. This is the extent of how bright we're going. This is the extent of how you know, how detailed the highlights are going to be, things like that. And then then we stop. And then because you've got one area completed, then you know the next area you work on, you know, okay, I need to get it up to this point. and then I stop, and then I move it on to the next point. I get it up to this point. It helps prevent maybe something, I guess you could call it creep. It doesn't really work super well for my brain, but, you know, I could try it again, but it has not worked terribly well for my brain in the past. But a lot of people, it works perfectly for their brain. So if that works for your brain, if that makes your brain buzz, if it makes sense to you, then that is absolutely something you could do as well. There are just so many different ways that you can approach miniature painting. There's really very few limits to how you can approach it and really accomplish it, as long as paint's getting on the model and you're satisfied, or you're close to being satisfied with the results. That's the most that matters, really. Does that make sense, Alex? Really appreciate the advice. Has been very helpful. I appreciate it. Hey, you're very welcome. Thank you for asking questions. Most common way to approach mini painting is not only paint your minis is to not paint your minis and keep buying boxes. Let an house process take hold. Yeah, that seems to be fairly common. Cannot recommend. As a victim of it, cannot recommend. Definitely recommend, you know, buying a box, painting it, and then maybe then thinking about another one. So one thing that we're gonna really need to address here is, you see how this just looks really stark, and it just feels weird when we've got, it feels really unrefined, undetailed. And one of the reasons for that is there's no black lining. There's no dark line outlining each section from the section next to it, and that is something that we can add in here in a little bit after we do some more work here. But that black lining really helps the eye distinguish between different details, and it's pretty important to really help a model look and feel complete. You'll see that as black lining or dark lining in a lot of any discussions you look up online or things like that about it. That's the terminology that's used. Black lining or dark lining. Black lining uses black. Dark lining will generally use like a dark brown or something similar. They both accomplish the same thing, but they're just using different hues to do it. And sometimes people want to use the black, and it gives them a certain look. Some people want to use, you know, a hue that is close to what they're working on, or the area they're working on, and it just wanted to be darker to get that separation. So it just kind of depends. Neither one of them is right. Both of them, it really depends on the painter and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to emphasize. Start small and start fast. Play some kill team and paint those guys. Expand your army. Yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna paint the weapon this mahogany color, and then we're gonna go up into some reds. Keep in mind that we're not going to use a whole bunch of different colors on this. We're going to be very almost monochrome, very limited palette on a lot of these. So if some place is set to like, okay, this is red, it is going to be mostly almost entirely just that color. Just to stick with the whole idea of those early cartoons that had very limited palettes for characters. Usually their weapons were maybe one color, maybe two colors, things like that, just because they needed to be drawn very quickly and with a great economy. So that kind of forced certain limitations on the aesthetics. And we're just gonna, those aesthetics informed what those worlds look like. So we're going to continue to lean into that whole idea of like, okay, her cannon is red. It's almost gonna be red. We'll probably go into orange in a couple areas, but it's gonna be red. Just bought the Leagues of Votan battle box. My friend insisted we paint the whole box before I expand. I appreciate hearing similar advice. Yeah, it's good advice. Mm-hmm. 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 Let's see. I'm gonna go in a smaller, detailed brush here. Yeah, Alex, no worries. You know, health issues aside, I hope you're enjoying your time with Warhammer and tabletop in general. If there are plenty of ways to get into the Warhammer hobby and into the community without having to play the game. So if ultimately you find out that the game's just not for you or something else pops up, there are always the books, the audiobooks, the comics, the shows, especially with Henry Cavill working on a show with Amazon right now. There are so many ways to be involved in this hobby that don't necessarily require the game or the miniatures. So, you know, don't feel like you have to participate in those or you're not going to be part of the hobby. There are tons of people who just read the books, just play the games, and they are just as much as fans as people that paint and play. I don't even play much. I barely ever play Warhammer anymore. I played some Necromunda. That was a lot of fun. I played Warcry. I played 40K up until about 7th edition, and I just was like, yeah, I'm not feeling it anymore. AOS, I played 1st edition. I don't think I played anything after 1st edition. But I still had a good time. And I still paint a lot of Warhammer because it makes me happy. I read a lot of books. All of those are perfectly legit. Now I'm doing this because I want these front shields with all the different cells. I kind of want them to be a little bit more detailed. I want them to look like they're like either part of the energy projector or they are reflectors of some sort. So I kind of want to make them glassy looking, or at least individually tiled. So I'm coming in here with a very fine tipped brush, and I'm doing each one, the top 2/3 of each one as this burnt red, and then we'll go even higher with the red on each individual tile here, just to give it some particular like specialist like look. Tabletop really interests me. I just have zero artistic abilities. Still wanted to play. No, I totally understand. Saw dinosaurs riding other dinosaurs as a kid, and that was the beginning of the end for me. Totally get that. Lizardmen are awesome. Dinosaurs riding other dinosaurs. Yep. Let's go a brighter red. Any advice on shading? I just start out with washes. But like, I'd base coat your mini, and then maybe like use a wash to get your initial highlights in there, or your initial shadows. Sorry, because that wash is going to do a lot of initial shading work, and then if you want to neaten it up, you can come back in with the base coats that you used, and just use those to neaten everything up. Once you're more comfortable with that, and you're more comfortable with your brush control, then you could absolutely, or you could do it now. You could start to look at actually, painting in. Start with a really dark color. Start your paint job with a darker color, and use that color as your shadow, and then build up from there. It's kind of what I did. I started with my darkest color, and then I painted in my midtones. I didn't start at midtones. I didn't start at the color I wanted everything to read as. I started darker and then worked that up. So that's something you could do. But generally, people, the fastest and the easiest way to start is just learning your base coating, getting everything blocked in, and then hitting it with a wash, and then cleaning up the wash afterwards, and then you move from there. Yeah, base coat, wash, highlight. Am I next to a fire? I have a fire soundtrack going on in the background. The whole idea is like I'm hanging out in the Great Library of Magic in my study here, and so I have a fire soundtrack going on in the back end, and I've got a fire light flashing on one side of my face. It's not terribly bright right now. I probably need to get a new one. But that's supposed to be the ambiance. I get distracted by music. Either I get into the music, or I find the music to be extremely annoying and distracting. So I don't usually have music running during my streams, because I find it to be unnecessarily distracting. At best. So I wanted something on in the background, because I also tend to like lapse into silence while I'm focusing. So I wanted something to fill the silence that my my introverted nature brings up every now and then. So I'll be having entire thoughts in my head, and then I'll just forget to say them out loud. Hey, happy New Year. Gonna be looking out for more of your streams. Thank you. Yeah, you're very welcome, Alex. Have a wonderful next rest of your night. Happy New Year. Thanks. We got 1 minute before ads start again, so here in just a little bit we're gonna take another ad break. So that means another 3 to 5 minute break here on the stream, just so that people have time to hydrate, use the bathroom, while others are stuck behind ads, so they don't miss any of the stream. So we take a break, and I run ads on an hourly basis, so that they're not run on me by an automated system, and so I'm in control of when they go, so I can predict it. And it also just allows people to, if I run 3 minutes of ads every hour, people coming into the stream won't get hit with pre-rolls, or they won't be as long. Generally, they just don't get hit with pre-rolls at all. So I run ads to help avoid that, so people don't. It's nothing worse than raiding in and being stuck behind an ad for 6 minutes after the raid started. That just kills the mood for everybody. So I run ads to avoid that. Yeah, pre-rolls are not great. I am going to need to wash this, or at least wash the skin. The skin is very bright. There you go. See, now you can see some of the musculature, because the skin isn't so bright that the light's not overwhelming it. So there you can see some of her absolutely jacked back. This woman does lats. She is at the gym. Oh, ads already started. We will be back. Okay, a little bit of a shorter break, but I got started on the break a little late. That's okay. We're gonna go over here. We're gonna work on her a little bit. Thin down our paint. Anybody else working on anything tonight? Any other hobbies going on? No. Inside Art said he was working on a Terminator, I think. Said they were working on a Terminator. Anybody else working on anything? Doesn't have to be miniature painting, just anything in general, anything artistic, creative. I'm gonna stare at this epoxy for 12 hours while it cures. I have to sculpt. But I'm stalling because it's 11 p.m. and I'm tired. Oh, I totally understand that. I'm waiting on primer to dry. It can take a while. I'm waiting on something. I'm waiting on some epoxy sculpt to finish curing so that I can keep working on something. Show you what it is here in just a second. Oh, dry times. Why must you take so long? other than, you know, fundamental laws of chemicals and polymerization and things like that. Other than that bullshit. I sculpted a tail. I don't know why, but I did it in parts, so I have to wait for it before I continue. Oh, I gotcha. I'm just starting out, trying to learn a bit before some models I ordered arrive, so I'm using this broken puzzle statue thing as a test. How do you know how much primer do you need to put on? Generally, you don't need a whole lot. Yeah, if it covers the model, then you should be set. But even then, it doesn't have to cover the entire model. As long as it's covering the most exposed areas, then it should be fine. But generally, you know, most of the model is what you want to do to be safe. So this is what I'm waiting on curing. It's a base topper or a floor made of epoxy sculpt, and I used a texture roller to put this design in here. Now I'm waiting for this to cure because it is not fully attached to the block. So once it's cured, I'm gonna slice under here and to take this off. I mean, I could have just, you know, done this separately, but I was hoping it would attach. It did not attach properly. But once this is cured, I'm gonna pop it off, or try to pop it off, and get some super glue under there, and then put it back on. And then this is going to be the base for my for the Death Watch Marine. So he's going to be like on a Tau world, like we're doing something against the Tau here. So it's going to be, this dude's going to be on a little display plinth. That's the idea behind him. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I need to make a darker color because I need to add in more contrast to this. So I'm going to take the dark warm skin tone, and I'm going to add a little bit of mahogany to it to darken it. And it's going to add a little red little bit more red to it. To help keep it look alive. Looking like it's alive. And then we're going to use this darker color, and we're going to try in a couple spots. It may not be dark enough. We're going to try in a couple spots and see if we can get some color separation here for a couple different areas, because this is really... Nope. They go darker. Problem is, this is also going pinker. Trying to get her back muscles to stand out a little bit more. Also some areas where there's still blue paint showing through. So trying to cover those up. And then on the arms, there's so little of her arms that are exposed, it's hard to see where the muscle groups are. So I'm still trying to outline those a little bit. Gaslighting myself into believing into working so hard on these kid bashes for what amounts to hive scum with extra steps is worth it. If it makes you happy... Okay, would it maybe have attached better if you drilled a few holes for the... Wait, what? You ever glaze in shadows and skin like her back? Hey, Voodoo. Yeah, I have. It's just really, really small. So I wasn't using a glazing method right there. It was more doing kind of a semi-layer because the back muscles are so small. Just don't know if I can get a proper like glaze motion here. Let's go. While we're waiting for that a bit. Dry brushing can be difficult for a lot of people to do. What's the main problem you're running into? Is it looking streaky? Is it chalky? Is it just not dry brushing? Like what's it doing? What's happening? Because if it's streaky or if it's looking chalky, then you probably are not removing enough paint off of the brush. Hey, was there any advice for a 19-year-old just figuring life out? I'm a financial consultant. I also study a lot at uni. Also, this is on hold. No followers. I don't think you're... Yeah. Yes, it's 100% worth it if I just know... Yeah, that's alright. I can't give you any good financial advice. Look at what I do for a hobby. If you've got a hobby, then do it in moderation. Don't let it take control. Save money, but also be realistic about what your life costs. That's all I got. It's kind of what I wish I did. I'm very blessed to be where I am, but it also took me a longer time to get here than other people, and I'm still well behind where people say you quote unquote should be at my age. So probably not the person to look to for financial advice. Probably never own a home. Don't know if I'll ever be able to retire. You know, all that fun elder millennial stuff. Tips for new painters. Just finished a set of Infernus Ultramarines. Nice. Tips for new painters. I've got a few videos on... Just been so scared about my future. I totally get that. Work your ass off at whatever job you've got, but only if there's possibility for upward mobility. Keep your eye open for any opportunities elsewhere, because the most common way to get a raise now is to switch jobs or switch companies. I've been very blessed that I've not needed to do that to move up, but most people do. So don't don't let loyalty to a company blind you to other opportunities. You're 19 and you've got an apartment and things like that. You're actually doing fairly well. Work your butt off where you are, but do not compromise yourself, your work-life balance. No company is going to be loyal enough to you to make ruining your work-life balance and moving into huge amounts of stress. No company is going to be worth that. No company's going to be loyal enough to you to be worth that. There's a lot of uncertainty out there right now, so I totally understand being worried about your future. I get it. Well, the only thing you can really do is to try and, make yourself valuable where you are. Expand your range of skills. Don't just sit in one range of skills. Understand how other parts of the business work and how those parts interact and interface with where you are, so that you can speak intelligently about them and understand more about how things work, because that's going to be useful in the company you're at now, but it'll also be useful in the future at other companies, because you'll understand how the systems work. And you'll already be used to learning and figuring out how they function and how they work together. That is a useful skill, being able to build that mental model of how those types of systems work together and how your work fits into that. That is very important. Do things other than just work, outside of work, like, have a hobby that's separate from work. That's why I paint miniatures. I don't do this for a living. This is what I do because I enjoy teaching, but this is what I do to unwind and relax as well, and it's not related to my work in any way, shape, or form. So when I do this, I'm completely not thinking about work in any way, shape, or form. And that helps me to decompress. It helps me to disengage, at least temporarily, so that I can let my brain recharge, because just continually going is exhausting. Jay, there's a, if you're still here, there's just so many, there are so many different things that could be said as a tip for new painters. It really kind of depends on what you're struggling with or what you're trying to learn. If you were brand new, then I'd have tips, but you're not brand new. You've just painted some Space Marines, so the super basic tips aren't going to be super useful. So I'm not entirely certain what to tell you. Been sitting here trying to think, and I realize you've probably left by now. You're brand new. Just keep in mind that you know you cannot you basically cannot ruin a model unless you have physically altered and damaged or destroyed the model. You really can't ruin a model. Model can always be stripped with like isopropyl alcohol or simple green or Dettol, depending on where you are in the world. So you can always strip the paint off, or you could always repaint it. Just paint base coat over everything you just did, or your mistake, and go again. There's nothing wrong with that. I will say, when you are, depending on what type of palette you have, actually regardless of what type of palette you have, I'm using a wet palette, but even if you're using a dry palette, when you get paint out onto your palette to actually paint, don't thin the main portion of your paint. Okay, so if you get some paint out here and you need to work with some thinner paint, pick some up and drop it off to the side and thin here. Thin the paint you got off to the side. Don't thin your main puddle of paint, because as you paint, you will need different consistencies of paint for different purposes. So maybe for like doing really thin scratches, you need some pretty thin paint. If you're doing edge highlights, you need some thicker paint, and so you may need to switch in between those. So don't thin down every last bit of paint you have. Just thin down what you need, and then work from there with what you've got. And then if you thin paint down too much, then you can go back to your main puddle of paint and grab some of that and add it to the paint you were thinning to thicken it back up, without having to bring out your paint pot again. And then, let's see, thinning paint. Let's see, don't load your brush more than halfway or one third to load your brush up to here, maybe only halfway up, just to keep paint from getting down into the ferrule, and that'll ruin your tip if paint gets down there and dries down there. So, Make sure that you are keeping the paint out of your ferrule and it's not getting loaded into the paintbrush very far. Let's see. What do you think of the best way to study these techniques? I'm not good at highlights. Basically, I'm not good at the extensive detail, but I'd love to bring my army more to life. Sure. So if there's something specific you want to practice and learn, obviously there's videos, there's articles that you can read or you can watch. When it comes to highlighting, when you're just starting out, you can hold your miniatures underneath a light and like take a picture of it, and where the light's reflecting off, that'll tell you where your highlight should go. That's one way of doing it. So let me see if I can get a better... So like I've got this miniature here, it's a big dude, and then I can hold him under a light, directly under a light, so the light's coming down like this right now. And here I can see where that light's hitting on his model. And then I can take a picture of this with my phone, and that'll give me an idea of where to do the highlights, because I've got this light positioned at the same point that I want the sun to be at when it's hitting this miniature. And then when you're painting, push your shadows and your highlights farther than you think you should, because right now you do not have, if you have no artistic experience or anything like that, you do not have a good sense of judgment for when it comes to values, how bright and dark different things are and how bright or dark they should be. I didn't. And I had very little artistic background at all, so that's something that it just got pushed into my head by a lot of people that I was talking to. Is like, you need to go brighter highlights, darker shadows, brighter highlights, darker shadows, and it felt really weird. It felt really scary, because it's just like, wow, this just seems really extreme. But it's just because I didn't have a good perspective. I didn't have a good feel for what the ranges actually should look like. So let yourself do brighter highlights than you think and darker shadows than you think. That is going to work out fairly well for you. It's going to feel weird at first, but it is important. And then, you will go too bright, and with more practice, you'll be able to, like, okay, that's too much, and then you'll be able to bring it back. And probably the first time you do it, you'll see that it's like, wow, this is a lot brighter than I really need it to be. It's not really looking good, and you can bring it back. You can dull it down, and that's just that's part of learning how to adjust things. So push your highlights higher than you think you should, and push your shadows darker than you think you should. That's going to be the thing that's going to push you even farther into actually figuring out how to paint with light and the way light makes sense. And that is going to be one of the biggest moves forward for you. Is looking at this as you're not painting color, you're painting light. You're painting light bouncing off of the miniature. You're not painting just colors. This is not a coloring book. That will help. Because the more that people realize that you are painting light, and that light is the most influential thing in painting these miniatures and painting portraits or in any type of painting. Painting light is more important than anything else, and knowing that really helps. It helps you change your perspective and have a more nuanced perspective when it comes to what you're painting, I think. Remember that unless you're painting for a competition, very few people will look at your minis as closely as you do while painting them. The minor mistake you make... Yes. The minor mistake you made isn't the end of the world, especially for games like AOS and 40k. That one missed line is invisible if your unit 30 units. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You are going to be more harsh on your painting than anybody will who's at the table. Because they look at your paint job in general, but they're not going to be like dissecting it. It's a tabletop model. It's not a competition model. There's no reason to dissect it unless you're trying to learn something. And even then, that's very rare. So don't worry about it. Also, oftentimes we hate what we paint because it looks like we painted it. So and that's because we're aware of all the mistakes that we made. We're aware of them. Other people are not going to be aware of them. Other people aren't going to see them, but we see them because we painted it, and it looks like we painted it. So we see all of our flaws and all of our mistakes. Other people look at the miniatures they painted, and they see all their flaws and their mistakes, but because we're not aware of them, it looks fine to us.
What do we got?
Oh, topping up the mana pool, are we? Hey, Ford! Thank you so much. I hope you're doing well. Happy New Year. Doing okay? Oh, I hope things get better if you're only doing okay. Doing okay is fine, but it's certainly not the ideal, huh? They will and are good. All right, so we've got a lot of the bare basics done, but now it's a lot of refinement and really trying to push some of the light and some of the shadow in areas. It's just going to be a lot of back and forth, going back over things and brightening them up, because a lot of times the Pro Krill it dries a lot darker than you've got laid down on as, and that's something you're going to find with a lot of paints, regardless of the manufacturer. A lot of them will dry much darker than they got laid down as. So it's a good thing to lay down your colors, to then wait for things to dry, work on other areas, wait for things to dry, see what the result is, and say, yep, that's not dark, that's not light enough, we need brighter highlights, we need darker shadows, especially highlights in midtones. So we're gonna keep on pushing some of these to get brighter in the next couple of streams. Still got these two to work on, then we've got the other two to work on. So this is what we'll be doing on stream for at least until they're done, because the guys asked for this there was no like hard timeline, but it would be nice if they were done by, I think, by the end of January. I think we can beat that, but it does mean that we're going to have to focus. And I'll continue working on these off of the stream as well. The stream's just kind of nice to kind of get some exposure for the game. But again, if you want to check out the game, look up Cyber Savage on Google. It's very cool. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to be doing a lot of work with it because I'm going to be making my own like spin on it for my game idea. So I'm going to be using it a lot and referencing it a lot, and probably be painting quite a bit of stuff for it or other versions of it. We still have plenty of other stuff to paint. I've got a bunch of Trench Crusade stuff to paint. I've also got Dark Water, the new Warhammer quest. So we've got a lot of stuff coming up. So we are not going to be we're not going to be low on subject matter to paint and to talk about, to nerd out about. So I hope you will continue to join us. We should be back next Tuesday for another stream at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That is the plan. All right. Yeah, he'll live here now. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Well, let's go find someone to raid to over on the Purple app. Thank y'all for being here. I very much appreciate it. Hi. It's good to have you. Thank you for all the likes. Thank you for all the follows. Appreciate all of you. This is the one that we got the farthest on. There's the other one. We still need to work more on her, but this is the one we ended up focusing on quite a bit, and I had a lot of fun. She's a really cool model, and just got to keep working. Just got to keep working on her. I'm happy with the direction she's going. And then, of course, we've got to keep working on her. Oh, thank you so much for more bits. I very much appreciate that. All right, we're gonna go raid out over on the purple app. I'm gonna go ahead and end stream on the red app. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time. TikTok, thank you so much for being here. I very much appreciate it.